Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, it finally stopped raining. Yesterday evening it just started coming down. Not super heavy, but definitely a good steady rain, and it rained for hours, and the creek it's up. You can see that. The whole property, it's like a big old swamp. So, good thing though, fills up the ponds and the lakes and all that kind of stuff. Can't complain, just got to deal with the mud for a while. But that's just this time of the year. You're in mud season. All of you homesteaders that live out like this, you know what I'm talking about. Mud season is upon us. Want to talk to you about, well, what is it going to be like after it all happens? And it's kind of funny. I thought of this last night and a little bit this morning when I got up, and then apparently one of the other YouTubers has done the same kind of video. I didn't really get a chance to watch it all, but Pinball Preparedness apparently has a video with a similar topic. We'll do our best, and hopefully we won't just be copying him and try to talk about some other things, but that's okay. I know he doesn't mind. It's interesting how many of us that do these videos, a lot of times without coordinating anyone's work, we kind of cross over and do similar things at the same time. Maybe it's just how we all think similarly. Anyways, the world is not going to be a good place. It's just not. There's too much evidence of past historical events, past civilizations that collapse, biblical references, and just watching how human behavior is today. Just look at it. And I understand that where you're at, it may seem pretty normal. People may be behaving in a fairly normal way. Fact is that all over this country and around the world, people are already starting to just kind of fall down the cliff of losing their civility and almost taking on an animalistic type behavior. And this kind of behavior is only going to get worse as things worsen around. World War III, famine, economic collapses. When it starts to become difficult for government services to offer their services, when the trash service can't pick up the trash as regularly because maybe the fuel costs or because of crime rates and it starts piling up, or the water service isn't as strong and as common as it's been in the past. Maybe the electricity. We've already seen throughout the winter and the summer in many places rolling blackouts because they can't keep the grid up. Supply chains, medical supplies. We've seen cracks being formed in our society, and as those cracks widen, we're going to see people behaving much worse, which is why I and many others tell you that one of the worst dangers, one of the biggest threats that you're going to face under a collapse is people. People, whether they are just individuals out trying to take from you, trying to harm you, or if it's individuals that have a badge and a gun, or they come under the banner of government. People are going to be the worst thing that you have to face. And that's why I advocate living as far away from those people as possible. That's always a very controversial subject, which surprises me. It always, every time surprises me why it's so controversial to tell people that you should do everything you possibly can to get away from these cities. I mean, can anyone honestly take a look at these cities right now and say, oh, they're a great, wonderful place to live? It's exactly where I want to raise my family. That's where I want my children to grow up. I want to be able to raise my children in a place where I drive them down the road and they're watching drug addicts and they're watching prostitutes and people just behaving badly and dressed inappropriately and doing things that I have to shield my children's eyes. I want to raise them in a place where it's lots of noise and lots of horrible smells and sounds and things that are just, not something I want my child to see and do, but I want to raise them around it. Now, I'm not putting people down that are living there, whether it's by choice or by necessity or by force. I'm just trying to tell you that living out like this it's way better in so many ways. It's definitely safer. And so I do always and will always encourage people. I'm not putting you down because you live in the cities. I'm not saying that you're going to die because you live in the cities. And I'm not saying that you're going against God's will by living in the cities. I'm telling you that if you can at all possible, make the sacrifices to get out of the cities and find some place away from them, you're going to be better. I was just looking at some statistics. Do you know that 97% of the United States is considered rural land? About 83% of the total population live in urban areas. 83% live in urban areas. Here's a map, kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. Most of those red areas on the map, which as you can see are not very many, is the large bulk of the American population. And so there's still plenty of land. I understand that a lot of this land out here is whether it's government land or state or federal government land, a lot of it's big farmland, some of it's reservation land, but there's still a lot of land out there. And the thing that, most of you, if you choose to do this, there's still a lot of land for you. And I still see, just the other day I saw, I believe it was 10 acres of land for $37,000. That's not bad. That is not a bad price. I mean, it's been cheaper in the past, but $37,000 right now for pretty decent. It was good land. It wasn't just awful, ravines and that kind of stuff. The point is that people behave badly. I'm not a big believer in altruism. My wife and I kind of debate this back and forth at times, but I just don't believe. Maybe I'm a little too pessimistic. I always considered myself to be an optimist, but when it comes to people and how they behave, I'm not so much. I've said for years that people are like cattle. You get them together and they just, like, all common sense goes out their brains. And it's like a constant battle with any human, regardless of their belief system or not. Any human is in this constant battle to try to do bad, or try to do good against this desire to do bad. And as things start to fall apart, those desires to do good are going to become less and less. It's time that you make a decision and get out of these horrible places. Hollywood is filled with movies and TV shows depicting what could happen. And some of us like to watch those because we think that gives us an idea of what could happen. They could. But just look at history. And you don't have to go too far back. Look at people and how they behave around the world when things start getting really bad. They lose all sense of civility. And that is what you're going to have to deal with the closer you live to higher concentration of people. Doesn't mean you're not going to deal with those kind of people living out in the country. It just means you're going to have to deal with a lot less of it. And I understand that there's a possibility that those people from the cities will start to move and migrate after things get bad out into the country, but it's going to be a lot harder for them. Travel, even if there's still vehicles to travel in, they're not going to travel as far and as fast as before. It's going to take them a while to get out here. We're going to see it coming, and the further you live away, the longer it's going to take them to get you. And if it's on foot travel, living just 30 to 40 miles away from a city, that's a pretty long way to walk for most people. Most people, it would take them days to walk 30 to 40 miles. And the possibility of them surviving that to get to you isn't a real high chance of that. So living out like this has many positive attributes. It's hard. You got to deal with a lot. Yesterday I was cold and wet most of the day between making videos and doing the things I do around here. I was outside almost the whole day while it was drizzly rain, walking through mud, dealing with it. My wife, she has to deal with the muddy footprints in the house. Of course, we try to stop that, but with children and animals and me in and out when it's this kind of weather, you have to deal with it. And there's a lot of things that you have to deal with. Taking care of animals, feeding them when you're walking in ankle-deep mud, it's not always pleasant, but it's way safer. And I can't think of any more way to explain to you why it's so important to do your very best to get out of these cities. There's going to be, I suspect, depending on how things kind of transpire, I suspect there's actually going to be a lot of people moving into the cities, and that may contradict what a lot of other people think. And the reason is because that's where all the stuff's going to be. That's where government services are going to be. That's where electricity, that's where food, it's all going to be there. Now, it's going to come at a high cost to your freedom, and a high cost to your health. But if you're starving and you're cold and you're sick, you're going to want to have to go to the cities to get help unless you're prepared to take care of yourself. So I do believe that a lot of people, even in the rural areas, will migrate into the cities, at least for a while, until those cities really start collapsing. When they start getting really bad, they're going to want to start to leave them. And maybe it'll be too late. They may be under some kind of lockdown and not be able to leave. But I think the cities are just going to get a lot worse, folks. I mean, they have. Just look at the degradation in the last 10 years. It's been awful. And it's just going to continue to get worse. Out in the rural land, you're able to take control of your own life. Yes, it's dangerous, it's risky, but it's all in your hands. It's not in the government or anyone else's hands. And if you're good and you know what you're doing, and you're maybe even a little lucky, you can meet others, and you can form groups, and you can learn to take care of yourself. It's going to be bad out there. And I don't think that a lot of people have really wrapped their heads around how awful this could all end up being, how far our society could end up falling. You know, one of the things that makes me believe that it could fall to these levels, or worse than what we're talking about, is the fact that our society has already basically given up on morality. In general, generally speaking, our society has already given up on what we would consider traditional morals. The very little of what the greater society is doing is based on any kind of biblical truths. Very little of it's based on any type of morality that's been around and been socially accepted for centuries. Because of this and many other factors, as it starts to collapse, the amount of evilness that will come out of these cities, I think, will be quite great. It will be dangerous for a woman. It will be dangerous for a child. It will be dangerous for elderly people. It will be dangerous for anyone. But the ones that are perceived to be a little bit weaker, and I'm not saying a woman or an elderly person is weak, I'm saying as society perceives them as being weaker, they will be a target. They will be a target and will be preyed upon. And we have seen this. We have seen this in other countries where they've gone through collapses, and women are in a huge danger all the time. Children are being taken and kidnapped and done awful things to. Elderly are being abused and murdered, and their property is taken. This kind of world could easily find its ways to our shore. And when you're in a higher concentration of people, where there's just more of them around, it's just mathematical odds, folks. You're going to deal with more of that kind of stuff. You know, if I have, you know, a small handful of people in a mile radius around me, then of course I have a lot less to deal with. And being that I live out like I do, the odds of other people around me living and thinking very similarly are pretty high. So the odds are that there's even less of those people willing to cross those lines and behave that way, because they're also out here trying to prepare and live a pretty traditional, biblically sound life. Not saying they all do, but there is a higher percentage of it. Not scolding people for not doing it. I'm not scolding people that say that they can't. I'm just telling you that you can. You can beat all kinds of odds if you really put your mind to it. My wife and I, we don't have a whole lot, and we didn't have a whole lot. When we bought this place, it wasn't money, it wasn't a great credit score, and it wasn't great health that made all this work. because all three of those things we really didn't have a whole lot of at the time. It was because of hard work and determination, just being bullheaded and saying that I understand we may end up having to live in a tent, but if I'm living in a tent in safety and freedom, then it's way better than living in an apartment under control and threat, constant threat. And so we made that decision, and that's what we did, and that's how we live. Of course, over time, we've been able to build up a little bit more, but it's still a struggle at times, and it most likely will always be. And I know many, many, many folks that live a very similar lifestyle, and it's the same thing for them. And some of them have a little bit more money, and some of them have a lot less. And they still are able to do it because they have made the determination to push forward against all odds. This is what's natural for us. Humans have lived this way forever. Only in the last few decades have people really completely walked away from the rural lifestyle and only been in an urban environment. And I get a lot of people saying, well, not everyone is really made to live out in the country. I don't believe that at all. I believe everyone is capable of living out in the country because that's how we were made to live. That's what we have done for centuries, for millennia. And this idea that some people are just made to live in the city environment's not true. It's time to get out of them, folks. I know it's hard, and it's scary. It really is. But you got to do it if you want to have a much higher level of safety and a much greater odds of surviving all of this. Yeah, you can survive in the cities. It's going to be hard. Security is going to be the worst. You may have a lot of stuff stacked up in your home, but how are you going to defend that with you and maybe one other person with lots and lots and lots of people in very close proximity trying to take that from you? It's going to be hard, but I strongly advise anyone that's listening and that's really listening well to try and do what you can to get out of these places. Because regardless of what type of collapse we're going to see, it's already getting really bad in the cities. Already getting, crime rates are skyrocketing everywhere. And the moral degradation has to be at an all-time high. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order. It's time to prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.